1 in 20 years paying the bitch back. Some time back I was hired to a company by a CEO I had previously worked for someplace else. He was a good friend, so when his newest company wasn't achieving sales, he headhunted me to join the new one. The company hadn't made a sale in 2 years. Year 1 the software product was in beta, so it wasn't ready to be sold. Year 2 they realized using the tech staff to make high-end sales to C-level executives was the shittiest sales model one could conceptualize. In general, and there are exceptions of course, these two personality styles don't speak the same language. Tech people talk tech. Buyers talk benefits and how the potential product fills needs. I bridged the gap well by translating tech speak into natural conversational language so buyers better understand how their needs will be filled. The job was an hour-and-a-half drive one way from my home, so the CEO said I could work from home as long as I kept the sales management tool current. It's where you keep the notes of each prospect's status, came to important meetings and made sure the executive team had daily sales reports. The first month I made the daily 3-hour commute because I needed to have solid, constant interaction with all the departments to rapidly form my sales strategy and develop a two-way confidence level with the section heads. Once I had a handle on things, I was ready to launch my sales plan. In the meantime, the CEO hired a VP of sales bitch boss who started 4 days before I hit the ground running to get in front of buyers. She was a VP coming from the banking industry and had a long career in sales and marketing and finance products. I hated her from the moment she arrived. She knew duck all about tech and I spent huge time trying to orient her, which wasn't ideal because I needed to work on my sales strategy. They brought her on board because she had strong experience gaining financial investors. Nevertheless, I forged ahead, traveled to a target state and spent 19 days crisscrossing it. When I came back I had 17 contracts from buyers totaling about $2 million in sales. My CEO was overjoyed. Fast forward 6 months and now working from home, I'm rocking and rolling. Sales are strong. CEO is happy. Good things are happening. Bitch boss has landed an investor willing to drop $6 million into the company, and they are coming into town for a discovery meeting. She asks me to drive up because they specifically want to meet the salesperson. Seconds before walking in the door for the big meeting, bitch boss pulls me aside and says she needs me to back her up on lies she has told them. Basically she doubled my sales numbers. I told her there was no way I was going to do that. She says the CEO has okayed the lie. We get to the part in the talk where the investor is looking over my inflated sales numbers on the prospectus, then directly asks me how many sales I'm making a month. Bitch boss is behind him waving her arms, but I was having none of it and answered truthfully. He looks askance staring at the document which has the false number listed, while she's giving me the stink eye behind him. No one says a word. Dead silence. I ask to see the document and fates have aligned, allowing me to solve the dilemma. I explain the first two numbers were transposed. They correlated well to my real sales versus inflated sales if you flip-flop the first two digits. Potential investor is satisfied and we move on. Switch gears. About a week later I was meeting with the CIO in his office and he referred to my big tits. I'm no shrinking violet, but it stunned me because it was so unexpected. That night I was chatting with my best friends forever who happens to be a lawyer and told him about it in casual conversation. He said I should tell the CEO so he can address it. Thinking along smart business practices, I decide to tell bitch boss, to whom I directly report as proper protocol since we don't have a HR department yet. Side note, I also reported directly to CIO as a boss since my role was a muddy mix of sales and tech. The next day CEO calls me and I take him through it, telling him it's no big deal but to make sure he talked to CIO so it didn't happen again. He says he'll do it right away. 2 days later I check in with him and CEO still hadn't talked to CIO because the investors were in town. I gently push him to get it done and casually mention my best friend, who happened to be a lawyer, was the one who urged me tell him because any good CEO would want to know about it. I reiterate I'm not mad or upset. The only word he heard was lawyer. He went apeshit that I was bringing a lawyer into the mix. Now this guy was my good friend. We'd worked together at 2 companies for years. I calmed him down, or so I thought, explaining that I only wanted him to talk to CIO. I also told him I hadn't brought a lawyer into it, that I had been innocently chatting with best friends forever who just happens to be a criminal defense attorney. He seemed okay and we hung up. The next day I'm working as usual and I get a call from an attorney who explains the company has hired her regarding my intimate harassment claim. I'm flummoxed and adamantly told her that was not the case, that I had no claim against the company. She said otherwise. And that's when everything changed. Dramatically. CEO was furious with me for bringing this on when investors were looking at us. His reaction set the tone, which filtered down. The company began to retaliate against me. Shunned to make my life hell, forgetting to tell me about important meetings I was supposed to attend, freezing me out when I was in the office, telling me I could no longer even speak to CIO, a problem since I'm selling a multi-million-dollar tech product needing his input, and I directly reported to him as my other boss, denying me a long-planned, approved vacation. Basically anything she could devise to screw me over she was gleefully working it. Coinciding with this was a serious health problem I developed, ultimately requiring surgery. My illness had no impact on my work as I was able to work from home, which made things easier on me health-wise. Bitch boss then decided that I need to come to the office every day despite a 3-hour round-trip commute. Now I know you're thinking, why didn't I just leave, get another job somewhere else? I needed the health insurance. There was no way to turn around another job fast enough, and I had a complex surgery scheduled requiring 3 surgeons for my procedure. My doctor gave me a note for them which released me from having to make the daily commute so I could continue to work at home. As long as my work didn't suffer, they legally couldn't force me to commute, especially since working from home was a part of my employment contract from the outset. The night before my surgery, bitch boss calls to tell me they've canceled my health insurance. After hanging up with bitch boss, I collapsed on the floor in a faint. I was so sick, and mentally exhausted from all the stress. The next morning the CEO frantically calls asking to talk to me. My mom refuses to let him. I'm on official leave as of that morning and we're heading to the hospital. CEO had told their lawyer about canceling my health insurance and she chewed him a new asshole, telling him it was illegal. They immediately reinstated my insurance. In the 2 weeks I was out, my mom had found a lawyer for me as it was clear shenanigans were going on. I still needed them as an employer because I was in no shape to rigorously job hunt while recovering. Turns out all the bullshit they were doing to me is illegal. Companies aren't allowed to retaliate against employees when they report nefarious acts against them. I met with my new lawyer who said I had an excellent claim for retaliation and took me on. He said I had to continue working there while he did his thing to stay within protocol while he filed the original content claim. Now it's time for me to return to work. The company had relocated plan during my absence and bitch boss refused to tell me where, so I couldn't come back to work. Company lawyer told them they had to tell me, so bitch boss gives me wrong directions, making me late on day 1. I walk in the new office and it looks like any other place except for one thing. There is a wide open area directly in front of the CEO's glass office with a single desk in the middle of it. Welcome to my new desk. Also, I wasn't allowed to do sales anymore. In fact, I wasn't allowed to do anything, at all, period. They had hired a bunch of new people to the company and they treated me like a pariah. Turns out bitch boss had gone to them telling a pack of lies, and if they know what's good for them they'll stay away. Since I had nothing to do but couldn't just sit there looking like a dope, I worked on documenting everything being done to me per my lawyer's advice. I was meticulous in my note-taking. Bitch boss began writing me up. Stupid stuff like not answering my phone on the first ring and for asking questions during company-wide meetings, asking to see my personnel file, which employees are legally entitled to do although not entitled to photocopy any of it. Each time she wrote me up, I had to sign the write-up. There was a space for me to reply to it, so I consistently wrote, "I do not agree with this assessment." It infuriated her so much, she wrote me up again for writing the statement that I didn't agree with it. There were several instances where she called me into her office and literally began screaming at me loudly and enthusiastically. I wouldn't engage, though my standard answer to everything was okay, which made her apoplectic. At one point, she's inches from my face screaming, her face beat red, and I just sat there with a dreamy expression whilst envisioning her blowing a vein in her head stroking out. I infuriated her with my equanimity. Still and all, I was in it to win it at this point. It didn't matter what new humiliation they dished out. I took it all with a blank face, then went to my desk and documented it in my notebook. She loathed my notebook, sure that I was doing exactly what I was doing. Documenting. Because it was my personal property though, she couldn't take it from me. I had to carry all my belongings with me everywhere: company-wide meetings, the bathroom, lunch, because I caught her one time going through my desk, my ducking purse, although it gave me great joy to write a note reading "duck you," which I left in my backpack and jerry-rigging it so I could tell if she went into she did. I withstood it all with a brave face, only breaking down once I left for the day. My attorney took a lot of sobbing phone calls during this period. Finally the day comes that my attorney has what he needs and I can resign. Better still, he advises I don't have to give a 2-week notice. I come back from lunch and type up my letter with one sentence: I resign immediately. I take it into the HR guy, who also took part in their evil machinations, and hand it to him. His mouth forms an O shape and he half stands up from his chair as he reads it. He looks up and I give him a smile and say bye-bye just as sweet as pie, walked out the door and drove home feeling mighty fine. 1 month later, my lawyer and I are at the original content office along with the CEO, bitch boss, and their lawyer so the original content can review my claim. In my state, You can't just bring a lawsuit against a company for things like harassment and retaliation. Claims must first be evaluated by the EE original content, and then if they determine you have enough grounds to file a lawsuit, they issue a right to sue document. My lawyer presented my case logically and forthright, detailing all the evidence. It took him 40 minutes to go through it all. Then they presented their side with allegations of my poor employment along with their evidence, which were all the copious write-ups Bitch Boss had written. EE original content asks about the timeline of the write-ups, inquiring if they before or after my claim occurred. Bitch Boss, wearing a smug self-satisfied smile, states they were all prior to my claim as noted by the dates on each document. EE original content lady looks at my lawyer. My lawyer looks at me. I look at Bitch Boss, then serenely pull out my photocopies of the documents. Whilst handing them to EE original content lady, Bitch Boss sparks she's not supposed to have those, they're company property. I show EE original content lady that the dates have clearly been altered by Bitch Boss. She had made copies with the dates blanked out, then backdated them. You see, whenever she wrote me up, I had to take the document personally to the CEO to put in my personnel file. Along the way though, I stopped at the copier and took copies. She never knew I was doing this. You could have heard a pin drop. EE original content lady reviews the copies, then slowly sets them on the table. She didn't say a thing for a long time, then she spoke. I can remember her words exactly to this day. I've seen a lot of ill treatment and illegal undertakings by both employees and employers, including forged or altered documents, but I have never seen someone so incredibly stupid to present documents this easily disproved. Not only are employees entitled to receive and keep a copy of formal write-ups, but reading these ridiculous allegations, it's obvious you are trying to manufacture your case. She went on to say I had a clear case for a lawsuit, and moreover I would win it. She recommended their side go in another room and determine a settlement amount to pay me immediately or risk the lawsuit. They went to a nearby office and I could hear the lawyer dressing them down. Words I heard included lied to me, lied to EE original content, presenting false documents, broke so many laws, figure out a number big enough to pay her so this doesn't go to court because you will lose. They came back with a $50,000 offer which we accepted. My lawyer and I left, then did a football touchdown dance in the parking lot. Looking up at the EE original content window, I could see Bitch Boss in the window looking miserable and crying. She had just been fired. That was my year one revenge. I'm not a hateful person. I get mad and get over it. But for Bitch Boss, I nurtured hatred and vowed to one day get revenge, so I kept tabs on her, and discovered she opened a finance marketing company after she was fired. Then I waited a year before exacting my petty delight. For the past 18 years, I've executed a wonderful, soul-refreshing project. Each year I go to her website and write down all the work email addresses and phone numbers for the employees. Then I subscribe them all to get more information from places like online schools, online insurance companies, all those bullshit aggressive organizations that keep your contact information longer than a gypsy ducking curse while trying to sell you stuff. The last few years, I've subscribed them to an email bomb service where the service takes the address and instantly subscribes it to thousands of newsletters, request for more information feeds and other online buyers of email addresses for marketing services. I tested it with a burner email and it wreaks havoc on your inbox with thousands of emails received within seconds, and they never ducking stop. You literally have to close down the email because it can't be salvaged. Each year when I go to collect the contact information, all the emails have been changed to new ones. Last year my cousin took a job in the same building. I enlisted her help and she made it a point to befriend a receptionist working for Bitch Boss. After executing my yearly plan, my cousin went to lunch with her. The receptionist was in a foul mood and explained the entire organization was in disarray because IT had to redo all the emails again. It keeps happening over and over and nobody can figure out why. She said the owner Bitch Boss has had to get her cell phone number replaced 3 times because of all the texts and phone calls she gets whenever it happens again. Sometimes Bitch Boss would have her phone number on the website, which I duly subscribed to everything under the sun. The best part for me was hearing how she lost a mega client because they felt the company was in too much turmoil so often. The thought of this keeps me warm and cozy at night, and I sleep so very, very well. Added, I forgot a part of the tale. A Redditor mentioned that if the investor pulled out, that would have been a neat twist. That jogged my memory. The investor did pull out. Once I left the company, they couldn't duplicate the same scale of sales revenue I had been generating and the investor got skittish. The company did go on to success sans Bitch Boss and CEO, but it took them much longer due to this fiasco. 20 years ago $50,000 was a big settlement.